Hey guys, tonight we step into a place you were never meant to enter, a room without windows, clocks, or even a clear sense of direction. You stand there in the quiet hum of stale air, lit only by faintly glowing numbers drifting across the walls like fireflies that haven't decided whether they're alive or not. This is room 0, where mathematics stops being a school subject and starts acting like a living organism watching you back. And honestly, yeah, you probably won't survive this, but that's tomorrow's problem. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's fun knowing how many time zones get dragged into these late night adventures. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take your first step into room 0, and the floor responds with a hollow thump, like it hasn't held a human weight in centuries. The dust doesn't rise, it swirls lazily sideways, almost as if the room is exhaling in annoyance that you're disturbing its routine. A chalkboard waits at the far wall, but not the school kind. This one curves at the edges, bowed inward, as if gravity's having some sort of identity crisis. Historians still argue whether the first curved blackboards came from medieval monasteries or experimental Renaissance workshops, but none of those ever breathed the way this one does. Numbers pulse faintly across the walls. A quiet 3.141 fades in and out, repeating until the digits dissolve into static, like a radio searching for a station. You reach up to touch a drifting 7, and the thing flickers, then darts away like a startled insect. That's your first hint that math in here isn't passive. It's interactive, emotionally interactive. A terrifying idea when you remember how long humans have argued about whether numbers are discovered or invented. Fringe theorists even whisper that numbers choose when to reveal themselves, something your middle school textbook definitely skipped. You move further inside, and the air thickens with the scent of old parchment and something faintly metallic. It's the smell you get from touching old coins, the kind that remind you civilizations rise and fall but math scribbles survive everything, smugly immune. A joke sneaks into your mind: if cockroaches ever develop a number system, we're done for. A moment later you're pretty sure the glowing 4 on the wall wiggles like it heard your thought and disapproved. There's a pedestal in the room's center, smooth, circular, marble-like, but colder than it should be. The moment your fingertips graze it, tiny pulses shoot through the stone, too rhythmic to be random. You recognize the pattern. It's the Fibonacci sequence. Of course, even ancient architects used it for proportions, from Greek temples to Roman mosaics, and here it is now, pulsing under your skin like a second heartbeat. Historians still argue whether Fibonacci actually intended his sequence to represent natural growth, but when the pedestal beats out 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8 like a living metronome, you don't need an academic consensus. The chalkboard across the room suddenly shudders. A long equation appears on its surface, without chalk, without sound. Just there, as if the board is dreaming and you're intruding. You step closer, and the symbols slide away from your gaze, refusing to let you focus. That's new. Usually equations just insult you quietly. This one moves like a shy animal avoiding eye contact. A fringe mathematician once claimed the universe hides its equations from anyone unprepared to understand them. He was laughed out of academia, but standing here, watching numbers retreat from your stare, you feel like maybe the guy deserved an apology. You try again, squinting at the shifting symbols. They twist into spirals, then flatten into angles, then melt back into looping curves that look suspiciously like handwriting. Your breathing slows. The board is not displaying math, it's displaying mood. Your mood. The moment your pulse quickens, a jagged line erupts across the surface like a cardiogram. You whisper a shaky joke just to stay sane. Guess even chalkboards can judge anxiety. A soft scraping sound breaks the silence behind you. You turn, but nothing moves, only the drifting digits glowing lazily in the air. One of them, a lonely 0, floats near your shoulder, circling once like a curious pet. 0 is such a humanly terrifying concept. Ancient civilizations feared it, avoided it, outlawed it, or worshipped it depending on the century. Historians still argue whether India or Mesopotamia truly invented the symbol, but everyone agrees it changed the world. Here, though, this 0 seems like it's deciding if you deserve to stay in the room carrying its name. You exhale slowly. The 0 edges closer, then settles onto the pedestal as if claiming the seat of honor. The moment it touches the stone, the Fibonacci pulse stops. Dead. Silent. That isn't comforting. You reach out, and the 0 expands, flattening into a ring of light that rises from the pedestal like a halo with trust issues. The chalkboard behind you groans, not loudly, just a low stretch like wood cracking under pressure. A new line appears on the surface, entry accepted. Your heart lurches. There's no chalk, no writer, just a message carved by something old enough to be disappointed in your life choices. You walk closer, slowly, as though the wrong speed might trigger a mathematical trapdoor. The board now displays a small door shape sketched in glowing white. A doorway made of numbers, each digit vibrating at a slightly different frequency. You reach out, half expecting your hand to pass through meaningless symbols, but the moment your fingertips graze the outline, the numbers snap into place, locking like gears. The outline becomes real. A door, a literal door, standing upright in the chalkboard's surface where a flat plane should be. You hesitate. Your brain tries to recall some comforting mathematical fact, like how Euclid insisted parallel lines never meet, but instead you remember the more unsettling truth: non-Euclidean geometry says rules break down in warped spaces. And if any place qualifies as warped, it's this one. You touch the doorknob made entirely of rotating prime numbers. It feels warm, pulsing gently like a heartbeat, maybe the room's, maybe yours. Hard to tell anymore. The door clicks, the numbers stop spinning, something on the other side waits. Room 0 has accepted you. And unfortunately, that means the real journey has just started. You stand before the open doorway, the one sketched by numbers that now feels as solid as any door you've ever touched. The prime number doorknob stops pulsing, and for a second everything is too quiet, as if the room is politely giving you a chance to panic before things get worse. But you've already come this far, and turning back would feel like losing a staring contest with a chalkboard. So you step through. The world on the other side doesn't explode into color or dissolve into cosmic fractals the way sci-fi movies promise. Instead, it's a hallway. Long, narrow, painted in the soft beige that every public building seems to love for reasons historians still argue about. The walls, however, ripple faintly with drifting digits, like wallpaper that hasn't made peace with being stationary. You hear a faint tick. Not quite a clock, more like a metronome adjusting tempo based on your footsteps. As you walk, numbers flicker alongside you, floating 1s, 5s, occasional 9s, never repeating the same sequence twice. A mathematician named Emil Borel once suggested that a monkey typing forever would eventually produce every possible text. You glare at a floating 9 and swear it jiggles smugly, as if aware that it could type Shakespeare faster than you could solve basic algebra. A soft glow emerges ahead. Not blinding, just steady and warm, like the light of a lamp guarding a reading nook. When you reach the end of the hallway, the space opens into a circular chamber. Here, the air changes temperature in a way that feels almost friendly. The room hums with a gentle vibration, like an old refrigerator trying its best. This is where you find it, the day so lacking hip, the out-of-tune sequence. You notice it on the floor first. A long ribbon of numbers etched into stone spirals inward. The sequence begins clean and logical, something your brain immediately tries to name: arithmetic progression. Geometric, harmonic. For once, nothing fits. Every time you think you've spotted a pattern, the next number shifts out of place like a dancer losing rhythm on purpose. You crouch down. The air smells faintly of graphite and something sweet, like old paper mixed with burnt sugar. The sequence sparkles slightly, and when you touch one of the digits, just lightly, your skin tingles. It's warm, too warm. The symbol fades beneath your fingers, then snaps back into existence but in a new position, shifting the whole pattern by one step. Great, you've annoyed the numbers. Mathematicians have long debated whether numbers have inherent personalities, a ridiculous argument on the surface. Yet as the sequence shuffles itself like a deck of cards trying to show off, you can't help thinking, this one is mischievous, the sort that would move your keys and deny it. Fringe numerologists claim numbers carry emotional resonance, that 4s are grounding, 8s are ambitious, and 9s are drama queens. You'd roll your eyes, but the 9 skittering across the floor earlier proved their case a little too well. You trace the pattern inward, noticing how the room subtly rearranges its hum based on where you walk. It becomes slower when you hesitate, faster when you lean in with curiosity. You joke under your breath, great, a room with performance anxiety, and the hum dips low like a wounded tuba. Fantastic. Even the architecture has feelings. At the spiral's center sits a single cube, black, glossy, about the size of a Rubik's cube. As you approach, the numbers on the floor rearrange themselves tidily into a path, like they suddenly want to impress you. You take the invitation, stepping carefully until you reach the cube. When you pick it up, it vibrates once, sharp and quick, like a phone receiving a text. The surface lights up with a stuttering pattern of digits, and you instinctively recognize something. It's trying to talk. You tilt the cube, and the numbers blink into a new order: 117 36 121 59. You whisper the digits aloud, expecting nothing. The room freezes. Then the sequence reshuffles itself into a shape, a wave, a curve, a jagged mountain. For a moment, you swear you're looking at a graph of your own heartbeat. One historical fact comes to mind: the ancient Greeks used numerical patterns to map music, believing harmony itself sprang from mathematical ratios. You're reminded of that now, because the whole room begins to hum in a different pitch, as if adjusting its melody to your breath. The cube shifts again, showing a new series of numbers, this time arranged vertically. They repeat, glitch, then reorder into something cleaner. You are out of step. You blink. Okay, rude, but fair. You have been stumbling emotionally since stepping into room 0. Maybe the room noticed you panicking quietly like a Victorian child asked to do public math. You tilt the cube again, and it displays a new set. Correct yourself. That's not exactly comforting. And yet the numbers on the floor respond. They flatten into a smooth Fibonacci-like curve, then twist into something more chaotic, like a Mandelbrot set halfway through puberty. Historians still argue whether fractals are the best representation of nature's complexity or just an elaborate screensaver mathematicians won't let go of. You stare at the swirling pattern and feel like both sides may be right. The cube vibrates sharply in your palm, drawing your attention. The numbers brighten, rearranging themselves into a tiny equation, x plus 5 equals y/ou. You stare, definitely not standard algebra. Your brain tries to interpret the message, and the cube reacts to your hesitation by flashing a tiny exclamation mark. For a moment, you think it's scolding you. You mutter, "Sorry, I didn't bring my symbolic logic handbook," and the cube flickers like it's trying not to laugh. You stand, and the spiral of numbers on the floor slides apart, creating a narrow path leading deeper into the chamber, toward a wall etched with faint geometric shapes. The shapes rearrange subtly as you walk, forming triangles, then pentagons, then a tessellation impossible under Euclidean rules. The air carries a faint vibration again, and you realize the room is waiting for you to act. It wants you to follow the broken rhythm, step into the disorder, and let the out-of-tune sequence guide you. You lift the cube. It lights up with one final phrase, "Find the missing beat." And the numbers on the wall ripple outward, forming a doorway made entirely of spiraling, shifting digits, a portal humming with the promise of a rhythm waiting to be restored. You inhale. The doorway pulses. The cube warms. The sequence resets itself like a bowing performer, ready for the next act. And you step forward into the glowing corridor of misplaced numbers. You step into the glowing corridor, and the first thing you notice is the sound, soft, scratchy, rhythmic. Like chalk dragging across a board somewhere far away. It shouldn't echo, but it does, bouncing between your footsteps as if arguing for attention. The cube in your hand heats slightly, its digits blinking like a sleepy modem. You realize the sound isn't following you. It's leading you. The corridor opens into a room that looks exactly like a classroom someone dreamed about after binge-watching documentaries at 3 a.m. Desks float a few inches above the ground and swivel lazily, like they're stretching after a long nap. Textbooks hover open mid-air, pages fluttering without a breeze. And at the front of the room stands a chalkboard, massive, arched, shimmering, as if carved from obsidian and polished by ghosts with a healthy work ethic. You approach slowly, and the chalkboard responds the way a cat responds to someone it's tolerating. It twitches. A thin line of chalk dust ripples across its surface. Then, in a single smooth motion, it writes something on itself. Not someone writes. Not an unseen hand presses chalk. The board itself writes, its surface stretching forward like an inkless pen. The message appears in looping white script. Try again. Your stomach does a little somersault. Last time you saw those words, they came from your algebra teacher who was 40% disappointed and 60% caffeine. Now, they're coming from an object that doesn't have arms, hands, or mercy. Historians still argue whether ancient mathematicians believed chalkboards could store the intentions of writers, but standing here, watching the surface ripple like dark water, you're beginning to think they might have been right. You clear your throat. Try again. What? The board erases itself in a single swipe. Another message appears. The sequence wasn't the test. You blink. The out-of-tune sequence you wrestled with moments ago. Turns out that wasn't even the warm-up. A little insulted, you mutter, "Yeah, well, neither was my nervous breakdown," and instantly regret talking back to a sentient board. Surprisingly, the lights flicker in what feels like a sympathetic shrug. Great. You've built rapport with furniture. Next, the chalkboard begins drawing, slowly, like a child doodling shapes on a foggy window. Lines arc, bend, overlap. A circle forms, then another, then intersecting angles sprout from the shapes. Soon the board shows a swirling constellation of geometric loops. It's hypnotic, the way the shapes build and erase themselves in an endless, spiraling conversation. A fact bubbles up in your mind. Medieval scholars used geometry not just as math, but as a way to diagram the divine. The diagrams supposedly hid layers of meaning, one inside another, like a celestial onion. Watching the chalkboard now, you feel like you're peeling back a layer you weren't quite invited to. The cube in your hand pulses. When you lift it toward the board, the shapes freeze. Then the board writes, ASK. The instruction is simple, too simple. You hesitate. What do you ask a chalkboard that can clearly outmath you on every level? You decide to start small. Where am I? The board erases. Inside APROOF. That's cryptic. You fumble for understanding. A proof of what? A pause. Then, a proof of you. Now that's unsettling. The chalkboard, apparently satisfied with the psychological damage done, begins drawing again. This time, it writes numbers along the edges of the shapes, tiny annotations, microscopic scribbles trailing into margins. The room hums with energy. Something is building. You take a step closer. The numbers shift into languages you don't know, symbols too old for modern math, hints of Babylonian cuneiform, a dash of Greek, a sprinkle of whatever language numbers speak when they're gossiping behind your back. Historians still argue whether ancient math systems influenced each other by trade or telepathy. Standing here, you're leaning toward telepathy. The entire board erupts into motion. Lines twist and braid like strands of glowing hair. The chalk dust rises in a glittery haze, swirling into a vortex. And when the pieces settle, you see it clearly, a question. Written across the board. No equation, no symbols, just a single sentence. What do you believe numbers are? A joke slips out before you can stop yourself. Enemies. The board actually pauses, as if offended, then slowly erases your joke from existence like an overworked moderator. The question hangs there, heavier now. You feel the cube warming, urging you to answer honestly. So you try. You want the truth. Numbers feel like rules, boundaries, ways the world keeps score. The chalkboard shakes violently, deleting your words as though you flunked some cosmic oral exam. New text appears. No. Try again. You inhale slowly, grounding yourself. You think of room 0. The out-of-tune sequence. The rhythms, pulses, shapes. The way numbers seem to dodge, wiggle, rephrase themselves depending on your mood. You try again. Numbers are communication, not statements, more like responses, silence, utter stillness. Then the chalkboard writes, yes. Continue. The shapes dissolve. Lines collapse inward. A single figure remains, a circle split by a diameter. A simple symbol, something even kids can draw. But with the board's trembling glow, it feels loaded with meaning. The cube vibrates, softly, almost affectionately, and displays 2 pulsing letters, pi. You nod, though you don't fully understand. The chalkboard writes again, pi is not a number. It is a path. Your skin prickles. You remember that pi has been calculated to trillions of digits without ever repeating. Some mathematicians think it contains every possible pattern. Others think it's random. Historians still argue whether ancient civilizations understood its transcendence or just guessed well with circles. But here, right now, the chalkboard shows something beyond debate. The circle on the board rotates slowly, and the line inside it becomes a doorway, another portal forming, even more intricate than the last. This one is framed not by digits but by handwriting, equations written in a human script you somehow recognize. Your script. The door glows softly. Beneath it appears one more message. Follow your own proof. Your heart thuds painfully. The chalkboard is telling you the next step isn't about understanding math. It's about understanding the version of yourself reflected in it. The cube lights up in your palm, numbers spiraling across its surface like fireflies practicing choreography. You step toward the doorway. The hum in the room rises like a choir warming up. You reach for the glowing frame. Your breath steadies. The chalkboard dims, and you step through the doorway into the next theorem written in your name. You step through the glowing doorway and immediately feel the air shift, thicker, warmer, humming with a subtle vibration that spreads across your skin like static caught in a wool sweater. The space opens into a chamber far larger than the one you left behind, and the moment your eyes adjust, you freeze. Shapes drift in the air, slow and deliberate, like jellyfish swimming through gravity instead of water. Except these aren't jellyfish, they're geometric solids. A tetrahedron glides by your shoulder, all transparent edges and soft glimmer, as if it's been polished by angels or hyperactive math students. A cube floats near your knee, rotating gently, its faces flickering with faint chalk marks, equations that dissolve before you can read them. A dodecahedron hangs overhead like a chandelier with commitment issues. And all of them, every floating shape, whispers. Not actual words, just sound, like wind moving through crystal. This must be what TNT Tham Hin Hock feels like, geometry trying to gossip with you. You move cautiously through the room, and the shapes drift aside, creating a soft corridor. The cube in your hand pulses lightly, syncing with the rhythm of the floating shapes as if greeting old friends. You think back to a historical fact you once read. Ancient Greek mathematicians believed geometric forms were the building blocks of reality, the literal atoms of the universe. Historians still argue whether Plato meant that metaphorically or if he genuinely believed the universe was built from tiny mathematical solids wearing cosmic business suits. Judging by the whispering shapes around you, the metaphor might have been closer to a spoiler. A tetrahedron drifts toward you. You feel a slight pressure in your chest, like when someone steps too close in an elevator. The shape rotates once, pauses, then taps its point lightly against the cube in your hand. The cube flashes with a ripple of blue digits. The tetrahedron whispers. You don't hear language. You feel intention. The cube answers for you, projecting a pattern into the air, lines and points bursting outward like a star map drawn by someone who drank too much coffee. The floating shapes react instantly. They rearrange, realigning into a spiral formation around you. You swallow hard. Okay, you mumble, this is either good, or I'm about to get chosen for a geometry ritual. The dodecahedron closest to you shifts, its face is glowing faintly. A symbol appears on one of its sides, an X tilted at an angle, framed by two half circles. You reach toward it because apparently your survival instincts left the building 3 rooms ago. The moment your fingertips graze its edge, light erupts. Not blinding, just enough to make you inhale sharply. The chamber transforms. The walls dissolve into a shifting sky of lines and curves. Each line hums at a different frequency, each curve sways like a soft breeze. You're standing inside a living graph, one that moves with your breath, your posture, your heartbeat. A fringe tidbit floats into your mind, the bizarre claim by a 19th century mystic that human thoughts produce literal geometric shapes in the air. Scholars dismissed him as eccentric, especially since he also claimed triangles taste like lemon. But right now, staring at the trembling graph around you, you can't shake the sense that maybe the old mystic was just early. You lift the cube, and it answers again, this time projecting a wave across the chamber. The floating shapes respond by resonating with different pitches, each one tuning itself like an instrument preparing for a symphony. But then, the graph quivers. A long, low tone rolls through the room like distant thunder. A shape appears that wasn't here before. It floats alone, perfectly still, refusing to rotate, refusing to hum. A 12-sided form, but with faces broken, edges sharp, angles shifting like a glitch in reality. Its geometry having a meltdown. The other solids drift away from it cautiously. You take that as a sign to, maybe, keep your distance. But curiosity grabs your ankles and drags you forward. The unstable shape shivers. Lines break apart and reconnect in the wrong places, as if it's trying to reshape itself into something meaningful but failing spectacularly. Your inner voice whispers, wow, mood. The cube in your hand pulses once, hard. It projects a message onto the floor, unresolved variable detected. You exhale sharply. Why does everything in here talk like my math homework? The room emits a soft vibration that almost sounds like a laugh. Great, you're doing stand-up for geometry now. The defective solid jerks suddenly, tugged by some invisible force. A line shoots across its surface, straight, clean, perfect. Another follows, then a third. These form a triangle that glows brighter than everything else in the room. And the moment that triangle locks into place, something clicks. Not in the room, in your head. You feel a memory stir. A real one, not mathematical, human. You're sitting at a wooden desk, years ago. A cheap pencil, a triangle sketched on a page. Your hand shaking slightly while you try to balance the equation your teacher insisted was simple. You remember the frustration, the heat behind your eyes, the quiet fear of being judged for not understanding something everyone else seemed to grasp. You blink hard. The chamber blurs. The defective shape pulses again, syncing with your chest. It's mirroring your old fear, drawing it out. The cube flashes a new message. You are influencing the shape. The realization lands heavily. This broken geometric form isn't broken. It's reflecting you, the part you keep tucked away behind jokes and half-finished equations. Historians still argue whether mathematical forms can encode meaning beyond numeric value, but the debate feels trivial here. The shape isn't abstract. It's personal. You take a slow step forward. The shape shivers. Lines unravel, trying to stabilize. You raise the cube. Its numbers spiral outward like a comforting hand. You speak softly, not sure why, but it feels right. I'm not afraid of you. The chamber ripples. The defective solid freezes. Then, slowly, painfully, the broken angles realign. Edges sharpen, faces steady, and the shape becomes whole. A perfect, gleaming icosahedron. The other solids drift back toward it, welcoming it like a sibling finally finding its way home. They rotate as one, forming a halo of geometry around you. The chamber warms, as though approving your choice. The cube emits one final line of text. You heard the shapes. Now they will show you more. The solids begin to rotate faster. The room glows brighter. A circular frame forms in the air, a portal of spinning triangles and arcs, humming with an energy that feels both inviting and slightly judgmental. You inhale once. The shapes part. The doorway widens, and you step toward the next whisper waiting in the geometry of the unknown. The whirl of light around you fades, and when your vision settles, you find yourself standing in a space that feels older than anything you've encountered so far. Not ancient in the Roman ruins sense, ancient in the this place existed before the idea of numbers had the courtesy to introduce itself sense. The floor stretches out in smooth, dark stone, polished by centuries of footsteps that never quite belonged to humans. And at the far end stands a massive archway carved from stacked books, towering tomes with cracked leather spines and gold embossing that still glitters like it refuses to age. A desk sits under the arch, worn down at the edges, lit by a single lamp whose bulb glows soft amber, humming faintly as if it's tired but refuses to take a day off. And behind that desk, carefully sorting through a stack of papers with the precision of someone who has absolutely zero patience for nonsense, sits a person. Or, no, not quite a person. The being looks human enough at first glance. Grey cardigan, little round glasses, hair pulled back in a bun that screams, permanently overwhelmed but still thriving. But the shadows behind them shift strangely, swallowing lines and edges. Sometimes the figure blurs at the edges, like your eyes are refusing to resolve all the pixels. This must be the Nguoi Cantu Venan, the keeper of the hidden library. The keeper looks up at you, and their eyes, sharp, aware, far too calm, pin you in place. You took long enough, they say. Their voice is quiet but crisp, like chalk snapping in half. Most people rush through the geometry room. You lingered. Interesting. You clear your throat. Sorry, I was bonding with an icosahedron. The keeper raises one eyebrow. HMPH. Better than most. Some people scream when the shapes whisper. They gesture lazily at the hall behind you. They take it personally. You blink. The shapes have feelings. Everything here does. Some more than others. Especially the triangles. They say this with the same tone someone might warn you about unpredictable weather. Anyway, come closer. You step forward slowly, the cube warm in your hand. The keeper notices it immediately. Ah, they say, leaning back in their chair. So it chose you. That phrasing, it chose you, is not comforting. The keeper motions for you to sit in the old wooden chair across the desk. The chair slides out on its own, creaking softly like it's been waiting for centuries to fulfill this one very specific task. When you sit, the desk lamp brightens, illuminating the papers in front of the keeper. You notice something odd. The papers aren't written in words. They're written in equations, thousands of tiny equations shaped into paragraphs, forming patterns that look like sentences if you squint very hard or if you're completely out of your mind. You're halfway to both. The keeper taps one page. These are your records. My what? Your mathematical aura. They say it like this is the most obvious thing in the world. Everyone has one. Yours is unusual. You lean in. The equations shift subtly, rearranging themselves to align with your breathing. A shiver runs down your spine. Is that normal? Not in the slightest, the keeper replies. But then again, neither are you. Look here. They point to a swirling cluster of symbols near the bottom of the page. Your numbers fluctuate. They don't settle, like they're searching for something. You swallow hard. Searching for what? The keeper looks at you over the glasses. Meaning. You laugh softly, nerves frayed. Aren't we all? The shadows behind them stir, as if amused. The keeper reaches under the desk and retrieves a massive leather-bound book, the kind of book that would knock someone unconscious if dropped from a shelf. They open it to the middle, revealing diagrams drawn in glimmering ink. These, the keeper says, tapping the page, are forbidden theorems. You inhale sharply. Forbidden because they answer questions humans aren't supposed to ask. Questions about identity, memory, purpose, what numbers actually are. Their voice softens. And what they want. You freeze. Numbers want things. The keeper nods. Want, resist, whisper, invite, sometimes warn. They close the book slowly, reverently. This library houses every theorem ever suppressed, every proof erased from history, every formula scholars argued about until the arguments themselves disappeared. A mainstream fact flickers through your mind. In ancient Alexandria, mathematicians wrote proofs that were never published, claiming certain knowledge was too dangerous to share. Historians still argue whether those missing scrolls were destroyed deliberately or lost by accident. But here, this place, feels like the answer to that argument is sitting right in front of you, stacking papers alphabetically by imaginary number. The keeper folds their hands. You're here because you followed the sequence. It called you. You shake your head. I thought I just stumbled into this. No one stumbles into math this deep. They lean forward. Tell me, when did the numbers first follow you? You hesitate, but something in the gaze pulls the truth out. You tell them about the strange digits appearing in random places. The whispers in the geometry room. The shifting shapes reflecting your fear. The cube pulsing like a second heart. The keeper listens without interrupting, without blinking. When you finish, they nod sagely. Yes, it's begun. What's begun? The extraction, they say calmly. You stare. The extraction of what? Your missing variable. The keeper stands, gathering their papers as if preparing for a lecture. You've hidden a piece of yourself so deeply that only numbers can find it. They've been circling you, nudging you, trying to bring it to the surface. You swallow. Why? Because every person is an equation. The keeper steps toward a towering shelf, pulling down another ancient volume. And every equation must eventually balance. The room grows colder. The lamp flickers. Your cube vibrates in your hand like it senses what's coming. The keeper opens the new book, this one glowing faintly, and reveals a single line of text written in looping, golden script. The variable returns when the seeker is ready. You stare at the words, pulse pounding. The keeper closes the book with a soft thud. Now, they say, turning toward a narrow, curved staircase winding downward into darkness. It's time to descend to the archive. Your breath catches. The archive of what? The keeper smiles in a way that is not reassuring. Of everything you've forgotten. You grip the cube. The lamp dims. The staircase waits. And you follow the keeper into the shadows where forgotten mathematics breeds. Staircase curves downward in a slow, spiraling descent, each step carved from stone worn smooth by a billion feet, or maybe just a few very determined ideas. The keeper moves ahead of you with unnerving grace, their cardigan drifting behind him as if underwater. The cube in your hand throbs once, a soft but insistent pulse, like a heartbeat syncing with something deeper and older than you. As you descend, the air grows denser, warm, dusty, and tinged with the scent of ancient parchment. It's the aroma of old libraries and forgotten notes, the kind that sticks to your clothes and makes you feel smarter just by proximity. There's a faint hum down here, low and constant, vibrating through the stone. You suspect the hum isn't environmental, it's mathematical. You joke under your breath, cool, the basement is doing ASMR, and the hum actually shifts pitch, like it's rolling its metaphorical eyes. The stairs eventually lead you to a vast chamber that spreads outward like the belly of some underground cathedral. Ceiling lost in shadows, walls stretching beyond reach, and all of it lined with shelves, towering, endless shelves, packed with scrolls, books, fragments of clay tablets. Some glow softly, others whisper as you pass. A few rustle like leaves, as if annoyed you disturbed their nap. This is the Thuat Toan Linhon chamber, the algorithm of the soul. The keeper stops at the threshold and gestures you inside with an almost ceremonial sweep of their hand. Welcome, they say softly, to where the equations begin to feel. You freeze. Begin to what? The keeper gives you a patient, librarian stare. Every civilization tries to describe the soul. Most use stories. Some use symbols. A few attempted mathematics. They step forward, their footsteps echoing through the cavernous space. The archive stores all such attempts. Your skin tingles. You move slowly, eyes sweeping across a shelf labeled in a script you recognize but cannot read. The cubic pulse warms your palm, almost encouraging. The keeper leads you deeper until you reach a table carved from pale stone, etched with spirals and sigils. On the table sits a single object, a scroll tied with a red thread. This, the keeper says, is the earliest known attempt at encoding emotion numerically. You try to hide the spark of excitement, but the keeper sees it anyway. Careful, they warn, curiosity is currency here. The archive will take as much as you're willing to give. They untie the ribbon with steady hands. The scroll unfurls itself, looking simultaneously fragile and indestructible. On the surface are not words, but patterns, spirals, nested curves, sequences of small dots arranged in waves. The patterns feel alive, shifting subtly as you look at them. Then you see it. A sequence, faint but clear, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. You swallow. Fibonacci again. The keeper nods. Many ancient thinkers believed emotions followed patterns of growth and collapse, like the rise and fall of a tide. They tap the scroll lightly. Joy blooming, fear tightening, grief spiraling. It's all here, in primitive form. You trace a fingertip near, but not on, the scroll. A warmth rises from the surface, brushing your skin like breath. You pull back instinctively. Is it supposed to do that? Only when it recognizes a resonance, the keeper says. The scroll senses the emotional pattern of anyone who approaches. Yours seems to interest it. You exhale slowly, wishing numbers didn't flirt with you quite so aggressively. Nearby, another shelf draws your attention. A wooden tablet rests there, carved with rows of symbols. You step closer. At first glance, it looks like a calendar fused with a multiplication chart. But then the symbols rearrange themselves, forming a soft glowing line that snakes across the wood. The keeper notices. That one, they say, is from an early civilization that attempted to quantify the soul's weight. They believed a person's emotional imprint added literal mass to the universe. You squint. Is that scientifically reasonable? The keeper shrugs. Historians still argue whether ancient rituals were metaphors or crude physics experiments with chanting. Either way, they weren't entirely wrong. A nervous laugh escapes you. Great, so my bad mood could actually make the universe heavier. The tablet emits a faint thunk as if agreeing. You turn back to the scroll. Its symbols shift again, realigning into something new. A wave, then a curve, then a clustered set of points that look unsettlingly like a constellation. Except instead of stars, every point matches the digits of your cube's last output. Why does it keep doing that? You whisper. Because, the keeper says softly, the archive is trying to match you to your missing variable. The words hit you like a cold rush of air. My missing variable. The keeper steps around the table, studying you like a problem set. All people have one. Something undefined, something unbalanced, something unresolved. They gesture broadly to the shelves towering above. Everything in here, the formulas, the sequences, the forgotten proofs, they're tools. Ways to calculate the self. You grip the cube tighter. But what if I don't want to be calculated? The keeper tilts their head. Then why did you follow the sequence here? You don't have an answer. Maybe you were simply curious. Maybe you were drawn. Maybe room by room, the numbers were peeling away the layers you work so hard to keep together. Your thoughts churn. The chamber hums in response, vibrating sympathetically like it's listening. The keeper leads you deeper to a section illuminated by a single orb of light. Beneath it sits a stone monolith carved with swirling patterns and a single phrase written in clean mathematical notation, E equals self times memory. You whisper, that can't be right. Energy equals. The keeper lifts a finger. Not that equation. A different E entirely. They place a hand on the monolith. This equation suggests that identity, E, is shaped by what you remember multiplied by what you've forgotten. A balance of presence and absence. It's controversial. Historians still argue whether memory can be treated as a measurable quantity. The monolith pulses beneath their fingers. Your cube pulses in response. And then, the air changes. Something shifts behind the shelves. Something vast, like a sleeping creature turning over in its dreams. Scrolls rustle, books tremble, dust lifts in a slow swirl. You whisper, what was that? The keeper inhales deeply, eyes narrowing. A variable awakening. Mine, not yet. Their voice drops lower than before. But something recognizes you. The cube grows hot. The monolith brightens. And then, from between two towering shelves, a narrow doorway forms, carved from swirling equations that glow like molten gold. The keeper steps back. That, they say, is the next threshold. You swallow hard. Where does it lead? To the chamber of unspoken formulas. Their expression darkens. And once you enter, the math will begin to ask questions you cannot lie your way through. The doorway pulses again, waiting. You tighten your grip on the cube, feel its warmth steadying your breath. And you step forward toward the portal where equations whisper truths you've tried hard not to solve. You step through the golden doorway, and instantly the temperature drops, not sharply, but in a slow, creeping slide, like the air is retreating from your body. The space on the other side is dim, lit only by a faint glow rising from the floor itself. Equations, thin, wavering, luminescent, crawl across the ground like pale vines searching for sunlight. They slither under your shoes, rearranging themselves into patterns, then scramble apart again as if embarrassed you saw them too early. This is the Kankua T. Levang, though the keeper didn't call it that. You just know. The air has that unmistakable stillness, that sense of almost perfect symmetry pressing against your skin. It's the feeling you get when you look at something so well proportioned your brain whispers, yes. That. More of that. Ancient architects swore the golden ratio was the universe's secret blueprint. Historians still argue whether it's genuinely cosmic or just the world's most persistent case of confirmation bias. But here, right now, it's neither rumor nor theory. It's alive. The walls shimmer with rectangular niches, tall, narrow, then wider, then smaller, each sized exactly by the golden ratio. Every niche holds an object, a compass, a stylus, a scroll, a quill, a candle, each positioned with obsessive precision. Nothing feels placed by hand. Everything feels placed by intention. The cube in your hand buzzes sharply, as if excited or deeply offended by the symmetry. The buzzing stops when you lift it toward a niche holding a small metallic disc etched with spirals. The disc lights up. The spirals glow. The room shifts. Suddenly, a sweeping archway appears at the far end, perfectly proportioned, elegantly curved, glowing like the entrance to a cathedral designed by a mathematician with too much free time. The arch pulses, and a soft tone hums in your mind. You take a step closer, and the tone harmonizes with your heartbeat. A joke slips out. If this door starts singing, I'm leaving. A glowing numeral 1.618 flickers across the arch, like graffiti written by the universe. The cube clicks in your hand, a tiny mechanical chirp. It projects a message mid-air. Enter when you match the ratio. You blink. I'm sorry, what does that even mean? My personality is not proportionally arranged. The arch responds with a slow vibrational sigh that feels like sarcastic disappointment. Great, you're officially being roasted by geometry. You approach a pedestal at the room's center. On it rests a bronze sphere sliced cleanly into two halves. When you lift one half, a faint melody rises from within, soft, whispery, the kind of tune monks might hum during meditation or during a particularly dramatic spreadsheet moment. The keeper's voice echoes faintly from behind you, though they are nowhere in sight. The golden ratio was never meant to be just visual, their voice murmurs. It was meant to be felt. You freeze. You weren't kidding when you said everything down here is alive. No. A soft pause, and some of it listens. The whispering of the geometry room returns, not the words, just the cadence, like distant wind chimes interpreting calculus. Shapes begin to drift into the chamber, triangles, rectangles, pentagons, each one sized in accordance with the golden ratio. They circle you gently, forming a quasi-orbit. One rectangle drifts low to your ankles, like a curious cat sniffing a new visitor. The cube vibrates again. A new command appears, find balance. You exhale, annoyed. Balance what? My posture, my emotional trauma. The rectangle bumps your knee gently. You take that as a yes. You try to stand straighter, aligning your posture. Nothing happens. The glowing 1.618 flickers disapprovingly. You try controlling your breath, syncing it with the soft hum of the chamber. Still nothing. Something in the wall clicks, sounding suspiciously like a tongue tut. You mutter, okay, so it's not yoga. What am I missing? You lift the cube, watching its digits roll and reorder. The numbers settle in a calm spiral, one that feels oddly familiar. Then it hits you. The golden ratio isn't just about length or height. It's about division, cutting, splitting, proportioning something into unequal but harmonious parts. You look inward. You sense how your mind has been running, hyperactive, buzzing, tripping over fear and curiosity in equal measure. Everything inside you has been tangled, cluttered, out of ratio. You close your eyes and think of one simple truth. A truth that feels hard to say, even silently. You are afraid of what you'll find. The moment you admit that, something inside you shifts, splits into two parts. One part fear, one part understanding, not equal halves, not meant to be, but harmonious in their imbalance. Your breath steadies, the hum of the chamber aligns with your pulse. The glowing 1.618 flares bright, approving. The archway resonates with a ringing chime. A door materializes within it, carved from spirals and curves drawn with impossible precision. The cube flashes one last message, balance recognized. The door swings open. Beyond it lies a corridor of spiraling shapes, rectangles bending into corridors, corridors bending into staircases, staircases bending into patterns your brain can't categorize. It feels like walking into a painting you've seen your entire life but never understood. You step through. The door seals behind you with a soft click, gentle, final, inevitable. Ahead, the spiraling hall begins to rearrange itself, forming a path deeper into the mathematics of fear, memory, and meaning. The golden ratio fades behind you. And something new begins to whisper your name. You step into a room that feels like the inside of a tuning fork, clean, resonant, strangely clinical. The spiraling corridor gives way to a broad, circular chamber whose center is dominated by a holographic plane. It hangs in the air like a frozen lake of light. Lines and axes glow on that plane, and as you watch, they begin to quiver, reacting not to wine but to the movement of your pulse beneath your skin. This is the room where math stops being abstract and starts showing you what you're hiding, the graph of your fear. The first thing you notice is sound, high, fretful notes that rise and fall as if someone is playing a wrong piano. With each shallow breath you take, a point appears along the glowing axes, a tiny dot that blooms and then fades. When your heartbeat jumps, the point rockets upward, leaving a thin comet tail of light. The plane isn't merely displaying data, it's composing a map of your internal weather in real time. You feel exposed in a way that is equal parts embarrassing and fascinating, like being caught mid-yawn on a conference call, except your yawn is a panic attack and the whole universe can plot it. A mainstream fact bubbles up: people have been trying to quantify human feelings for centuries. In the 19th century, pioneers of psychophysics like Gustav Fechner and later Francis Galton laid groundwork for measuring sensation and correlation. Historians still argue whether those early attempts were a march toward objective science or an overreach that reduced the soul to numbers. Standing here, where your shame arcs visibly across a glowing graph, you think the argument has been turned into an interactive exhibit. The plane begins to draw a line for you, a tremulous waveform that follows the history of your immediate sensations. It starts low, a lazy baseline, comfortable enough. Then, a memory nudges you, that geometry room, the broken icosahedron, the way your throat tightened when the shape reflected your childhood fear. The line spikes, the light flickers, a tiny annotation appears beside the spike, triangle right pointing arrow childhood desk. The recording system is annoyingly thorough. A fringe claim you once heard comes to mind: some devotees of emotional analytics swear you can predict major life decisions by mapping mood cycles and sleep patterns. They make charts that look suspiciously like conspiracy theories and call them behavioral forecasts. You snort a laugh that is half nervousness, half genuine amusement. The plane registers it, and a tiny laughing curve wiggles into being. Joke 1, great, now even your skepticism gets graphed. You reach out, and the holographic plane responds to your fingers like a touchscreen for feelings. When you drag a fingertip along the line, the curve expands and segments itself into labeled regions: anxiety, hesitation, curiosity, deflection, your favorite, because apparently even your avoidance has a signature. The labels feel blunt, like someone calling you out in a crowded cafeteria. You joke, softly, to avoid sounding like an internet personality: does it have an "I'll deal with this Monday" region? The plane obligingly sketches a dashbox labeled precisely that and nudges it into your line with sympathetic sarcasm. The cube in your pocket warms. It has become less gadget and more confidant. Its digits speed up, rearranging into a string that translates, via the plane's odd, telepathic typography, into an instruction: trace back. You glance back toward the corridor where the golden ratio faded. The room hums like a question waiting for your answer. You follow the plane's trail backward. The glowing graph rewinds, not unlike a tape, revealing timestamps, small, sharp notches marking moments where your fear first flickered. Each notch unfolds into a vignette projected above the plane, flickering memories rendered as line drawings. One shows a childhood classroom, a hand raised and trembling; another, an exam paper marked with a merciless red X. The plane calls these data points, but they read like small betrayals you carried with you. A historian's aside drifts into your mind. Data visualizations became widely used in the 18th and 19th centuries to make social phenomena legible: thematic maps, population graphs, economic charts. Historians still argue whether those tools clarified truth or merely made political arguments look scientific. Here, the plane is both. It clarifies and accuses. You try to rationalize: this is just visualization, it's not truth. The plane answers by drawing a loop, an uncanny replication of a rhythm that used to soothe you as a child, your mother's foot tapping on the kitchen floor, maybe, or the metronome of a piano teacher who demanded perfection. The loop is labeled comfort pattern, and as you watch, your chest loosens for a beat. The holograph doesn't just read your fear, it points to the places you learned to hold it, to the small rituals that knitted anxiety into habit. A second joke slips out: because humor is a survival skill and apparently the room enjoys pacing, so basically my emotional life is a playlist with bad singles. The plane replies with a tiny album icon that spins like a record. The system has taste and shade. Now the plane does something else. It overlays a scatterplot, your reactions mapped against time and intensity. One cluster sits stubbornly in the high intensity, early time quadrant. Those are the old injuries, the formative humiliations. Another cluster creeps along the low intensity, frequent side, little, repeated slights and micro failures that aggregated into background noise. The visualization shows that not all spikes are equal. Some are volcanic, rare eruptions, while others are steady erosion. Your fingertips hover above a particularly jagged spike. The label resolves as public failure, age 12. You feel heat rise to your face as if someone has just called your name in a lecture hall you never left. The cube in your hand flashes a comforting pattern. It is trying, in its limited digital way, to be reassuring. It shows a tiny sequence: 0 right pointing arrow, 1 right pointing arrow, 1 right pointing arrow, 2, the Fibonacci pulse again, progress as small increments, the sum of little recoveries over time. Another joke: apparently even your neural repair follows decorative Italian math. The plane adds a new layer: prediction. Based on the density and slope of recent spikes, it sketches several possible futures: gentle slopes that flatten if you engage certain practices, jagged loops that repeat if you don't. The options are offered without judgment, like a menu at a cafe that has both salads and extremely regrettable pastries. The system can't force you, but it can make the consequences visible, which is both empowering and unnerving. This is when something unexpected happens. The plane begins to fold parts of itself inward, creating pockets of quiet, regions where the waveform slows and becomes steady. The cube's digits form a simple instruction: name it. It's tiny, almost obvious. The plane has been pulling your memories into coordinates, now it wants words. You realize naming the spikes, calling that public failure by its name, gives the graph permission to settle. It's as if language is a kind of stabilizer for the data. You whisper the name, and the corresponding spike eases like a muscle releasing. The room's tone lowers. The plane draws a small calming curve. The graph isn't gone, it's simply no longer dragging you across sharp edges. A fringe tidbit returns to the surface of your mind. Some practitioners of expressive therapies argue that mapping emotions can facilitate change, that turning an unnamed dread into a labeled variable weakens its power. Psychologists still debate the mechanisms, whether naming emotions is active treatment or a placebo for intention. Historians still argue whether those early uses of charts to display social facts were liberating or manipulative. Right now, you don't care about arguments. You care about the plane lowering its voice. You exhale. Your pulse slows. The holographic line levels. The plane registers the change, and in the margin, the word balanced appears in small, human script. You glance at the keeper's face memory, the person who guided you down here, and think of the desk, the lamp, the shelves full of forbidden proofs. The cube hums. The plane folds itself into a neat sheet of light and offers it to you, not as accusation but as a map you can carry. You tuck the glowing visualization into a fold in the cube, like slipping a cheat sheet into a pocket. It's odd and a little tender, proof that your fear can be seen, and therefore worked with. One last joke goes through, soft and honest: who knew my emotional quarter-life crisis would come with graphs and polite footnotes? The plane doesn't reply, but the ambient hum feels like a chuckle. You leave the chamber carrying your graph like a small, useful wound, one that will hurt less with daylight and less with names. The corridor ahead waits, lit by numbers still pulsing in time with your steps. Somewhere deeper, the missing variable listens. The corridor narrows as you continue, numbers dimming to a shy glow that clings to your ankles like fog with stage fright. The hum from the graph room fades behind you, replaced by a faint tapping, steady, deliberate, almost ceremonial. You follow the sound until the hallway opens into a chamber that feels impossibly old and meticulously curated, the way a secret society might decorate its living room if Ikea solved forbidden knowledge. Tall figures in long robes, dark, muted, mathematical chic, stand around a circular table carved from black stone. Their hoods hide everything but the occasional glint of eyes watching you with the weary patience of people who have read far too many proofs and outlived all the group chats. The air smells faintly of chalk dust, candle smoke, and disappointment. You found them. The Hoi Keen Kathwei Enatin Toan, the Calculators Guild. The tapping you heard, a gavel striking the table, held by the tallest figure, clearly the one in charge or at least the one with the strongest dramatic instincts. They lift the gavel again, tap once more, and the room falls into a silence so crisp it could slice fruit. "You're late," says the figure at the head of the table, voice soft but edged like a razor disguised as a compliment. "We began the probability discussion hours ago." You raise both hands slightly. "Sorry, I didn't know there was a meeting about me." A ripple of murmuring echoes through the hooded crowd, some annoyed, some amused, one distinctly sounding as if they muttered, "Typical newbie." The gavel taps again, silencing them in a single, impressive act of acoustical authority. "That is precisely why you are here," the leader continues. "The numbers have begun circling you. You have entered chambers few survive with sanity intact." A dry pause, mostly because they attempt to describe what they see. "We prefer listening." You step forward, cautiously, because nothing about the room suggests safe or snack break. The floor beneath you glows with faint grid lines. With each step, the grid updates, your footfalls generating coordinates, plotting your movement in real time. A mainstream fact nudges your mind: coordinate geometry, the marriage of algebra and shapes, was formalized by René Descartes. Historians still argue whether he intended his work to become spiritual architecture later hijacked by secret societies. Judging by the cloaked statistician cult in front of you, the debate remains lively. One hooded figure steps closer. They carry a scroll covered in dense markings that look like a math textbook had a baby with conspiracy graffiti. "We are the keepers of predictive calculation," they explain. "Many believe the future is chaos. We know better." A second figure unfurls a massive sheet of parchment that spills across the table. You realize with a jolt that every inch of it is covered in tiny, flickering graphs, oscillating curves, shifting probabilities, looping shadows of potential outcomes. It's a prediction engine, but handwritten. Or hand-calculated. You can't decide which term terrifies you more. "This," the first figure says, "is our forecast model. It shows the trajectories of lives, entire civilizations, storms, heartbreaks, lost socks, everything. Provided the initial variables are correctly identified." They tap the sheet near a pulsing cluster of dots. "These," they add, "are your variables." Your throat dries. "Why do I have clusters?" "Because you are unstable," another hooded figure says, sounding almost gleeful. "Your variables fluctuate wildly. You influence rooms you enter. You shift equations just by thinking near them. You are a troublemaker." "Is that a good thing?" you ask. A whisper spreads around the circle. Some nod, some shrug. One figure laughs in a way that suggests they haven't slept since the Renaissance. Then the leader leans forward. Their voice drops to a hush that still somehow fills the chamber. "Unstable variables are the catalysts for change." You feel the cube in your pocket thrum with sudden intensity. The figures turn toward the sound as one, like synchronized owls. The leader gestures. "Bring it out. Let it speak." You hesitate. The room leans in. You pull out the cube. Its digits ignite in a spiraling rush, casting sharp reflections across every hooded face. A message appears in the air: predictive lock disabled. A collective gasp rises from the guild. One figure stumbles backward as if someone unplugged their favorite theorem. Another drops their scroll, which reorders itself mid-air, offended. The leader hisses softly. "Impossible." The cube projects again. The seeker cannot be calculated. The chamber erupts in murmurs, fearful, excited, scandalized. A third figure with a staff carved from rulers and protractors steps closer. "Only anomalies break predictive lock," they whisper. "Only those whose missing variable is volatile." You feel cold. Volatile how? The leader taps the prediction parchment. The cluster representing you suddenly dissolves, like ink fading underwater. All possible futures vanish. Blank space yawns open where your trajectory should be. The leader turns toward you, their hood shifting slightly, revealing a glimpse of a face both ancient and youthful. "You are not here to be predicted," they say. "You are here to be chosen." You swallow. Chosen for what? The leader lifts a hand, and a circular section of the floor begins to rotate, revealing a spiral staircase descending into shimmering darkness. The air that rises from below smells like electricity in pages burned just before revelation. "For the formula vault," they reply. "The place where the future is written." Your skin prickles. So you're giving me access? Their answer sends a tremor through the grid beneath your feet. No, they say gently. We are following you there. A dozen robed figures gather behind the leader, each holding instruments, compasses, rulers, abachi, unfamiliar contraptions that look like calculators welded to theological artifacts. Their robes sweep in a synchronized, elegant rustle. You disrupted the predictions. You broke the model. You have a missing variable no algorithm can contain. The cube glows hotter. The staircase pulses with faint light. The leader steps aside, bowing slightly. Take the first step, they say, and let the unwritten mathematics recognize you. You descend. The guild follows, and below, in the depths where formulas never meant for human eyes are kept asleep, something flickers awake as your presence approaches. The stairs spiral downward like a helix, someone stretched into eternity and then politely told to behave. The robed members of the guild follow behind you in absolute silence, too absolute. No footsteps, no breath, just the soft swish of fabric and the faint clicking of instruments knocking gently against each other like the world's most ominous pencil case. As you descend, the walls shift texture. What began as smooth stone gives way to something like slate, dark, lead, shimmering with faint equations that seem to write and erase themselves in a steady inhale-exhale rhythm. One moment you see a differential equation, the next moment, it collapses into nothing, embarrassed by its own existence. You get it. Same. The air grows warmer, thick with the scent of heated metal and old ink. You reach the final step, and what spreads before you makes every room you've seen so far look like a cute warm-up exercise. This chamber is colossal, vaulted ceiling disappearing into shadow, walls stacked with shelves that hold nothing physical at all. Instead, shimmering formulas float, suspended midair like constellations. Some are crisp and geometric, others blur, shifting shapes like they're shy. The floor glows softly beneath your feet, each step sending ripples of numbers across the surface as if you're walking on liquid algebra. You've reached it. The Fung Trin 2 Viet Tiep chamber. The hall of self-writing equations. Every surface breathes math. The cube in your palm shudders as if overwhelmed, digits spiraling too fast for your eyes to follow. One robed figure murmurs, it recognizes home, in a tone far too reverent for an object that once buzzed angrily at your anxiety graph. The leader of the guild steps forward, gavel tucked beneath one sleeve. This, they say softly, is where equations write themselves into being. And where some choose to write, you. You exhale sharply. Okay, that sounds like a threat. A voice behind you answers, only if you resist. You're not reassured. The formulas overhead swirl gently, forming fractal vines that curl and uncurl like they're waking up. A cluster of glowing symbols drifts closer, brushing your shoulder with featherlight intention. You stiffen. One robe wearer chuckles. They're curious, they whisper. Not harmful. Usually, lands like a dropped chalk. The leader guides you to the center of the vault, an elevated circle where the floor brightens under your feet. The glow intensifies, forming a ring of light around you with the precision of a laser pointer wielded by a cat that majored in geometry. Stand still, the leader says. You'd love to argue, but the floor is already gripping your ankles with gentle warmth, so your choice is purely theoretical. The cube vibrates wildly and then flares with a burst of pale blue light, projecting symbols upward. The formulas hovering above you begin responding, swirling downward like storm clouds eager to gossip. One equation drops low enough for you to read. It's written in looping characters, not quite Greek, not quite Arabic, not quite anything. And then it rearranges itself into perfect, neat English. Define yourself. You freeze. Excuse me. The equation pulses, impatient. Another joins it, writing insistently, state your constants. You glance helplessly at the guild. One of them shrugs. They're asking who you are. This is standard. Standard. Who writes math about identity? Then you remember, you're in the vault where numbers behave like sentient archivists with boundary issues. You stutter out, I am, someone trying very hard not to freak out. A cluster of formulas ripples in disapproval, reshuffling into a messy scribble that feels equivalent to a collective eye roll. A robed figure mutters, vague definitions lead to unstable theorems. You grit your teeth. Fine. You try again. I'm curious. The formulas pause, then pulse. A flurry of symbols reorganizes into a new line. Good. Next. Great. You're being interviewed by trigonometry. You add, and stubborn. A soft hum of approval ripples through the chamber. The equations circle you more closely. And I'm scared, you add quietly. This one matters. The formulas freeze, then soften, their glow dimming to something warmer. A line writes itself in slow, deliberate strokes. Fear is a variable. Admitting it is balancing it. You feel something inside you ease, like an overloaded equation simplifying itself. Another cluster drifts downward, glowing more brightly than the others. The symbols twist and become a new question. What do you seek? That one you don't answer immediately. Because you don't know, or you haven't let yourself know. The leader steps forward. Don't answer with words, they say softly. Let the vault read what you cannot say. The cube flares white hot. For a moment you fear it will melt, but the heat passes through you instead, sharp, electric, like a current cracking open the sealed door of your subconscious. The room brightens. The formulas accelerate. They swarm you, not touching, but orbiting, like numbers caught in a storm of intention. Your thoughts flicker. Your memories blaze. Your old fears spike like wild data points. And beneath all of that, quietly, is the missing variable that has chased you through every room, every threshold, every whisper. The cube projects it, not in words, in a shape, a glowing, rotating symbol, a circle divided by a single ray of light. You gasp. The vault falls silent. The leader breathes, "Ah, of course." You demand, "Of course what?" They gesture to the floating shape. That symbol, half sun, half circle, belongs to seekers who fear forgetting themselves. You blink, meaning, you don't fear the unknown, the leader says gently. You fear disappearing inside it. Your throat tightens. Yes, that hits too close. Equations rise in a slow wave, encircling you completely. The vault hums with a resonance that feels like being seen, fully, painfully, mathematically. A line writes itself above your head. You seek to understand yourself through what you cannot control. Then another. The equation wrote you because you wouldn't write you. You feel heat behind your eyes. One last cluster descends, forming the final message. You are not here to be solved. You are here to solve yourself. The cube quiets. The formulas drift upward. The floor releases your ankles gently. The leader bows. You have been recognized by the vault, they say. And that means the next door will open for you alone. You turn. At the far end of the chamber, a new doorway forms, etched with shifting symbols that realign themselves into your shape, your pulse, your pattern. The vault whispers farewell. You step toward the doorway that now bears your mathematical signature, and the formulas begin writing the next chapter in the air ahead of you. You step through the doorway and feel something shift, not around you this time, but inside you. The air in this new chamber is warm, thick, almost syrupy, as if the room has been holding its breath for centuries and decided to exhale the moment you arrived. The light is soft, diffused, shimmering like reflections on still water. And in the center, floating at eye level, is a single symbol, a small, pale circle with a hollow center. Your missing variable. It hovers there, slow and steady, as if waiting for you to admit something you've been dodging since room 0. The space around it feels eerily quiet, not empty, but attentive. The type of silence that gets heavier the longer you avoid eye contact. You take one hesitant step forward. The variable brightens, not chaotically, more like a polite, finally. This is the Bian Sir Chua Duk Goi 10, the unnamed variable chamber. You exhale, trying to steady your breath, but the moment you do, lines appear in the air, thin glowing strokes that diagram your breath as a moving curve. The graph mirrors your inhale-exhale pattern, documenting it like it's taking notes for a therapist with a geometry degree. Historians still argue whether early mathematical mystics believed breath itself encoded divine meaning or whether they were just bored and overly poetic. Here, in this room, the idea doesn't sound nearly as dramatic as it would on paper. The cube in your hand grows warm, not the nervous buzzing from earlier, but a steady, supportive heat. Its digits shift into a soft ripple of zeros and ones, almost like a lullaby played on tiny LED lights. You whisper, "I'm not ready," and the cube flickers sympathetically, projecting a single message into the air. No one ever is. Great. Even the math is wise now. The floating variable slowly rotates, its outline shimmering in a way that makes you think of a memory trying to break the surface. You feel the tug in your chest, the familiar resistance when something old and unsolved brushes against the part of you that would rather move on without looking back. You step closer. Suddenly, the variable expands, unfolding into a ring of light. Inside the ring, images form, not sharp images, but soft impressions. A desk, a notebook, a pair of hands, your hands, clutching a pencil that trembles slightly. A teacher's voice, muffled, calling on you. The blur of eyes turning toward you. The flash of heat behind your face. And then, the moment you forgot, or forced yourself to forget. A single miscalculated answer. The room laughing. That small twist in your chest that never fully untwisted. You swallow hard. That's still affecting me. The variable pulses gently. Yes. You never zeroed it out. A weak laugh escapes you. Of course. My trauma's a math error. The room hums, not unkindly. More like a long sigh that says, everyone has one. The projections shift, showing not just the event but the ripple afterward. The nights you double-checked everything, the way you flinched when asked to speak, the armor you built from self-correction and deflection. The variable isn't showing you a failure. It's showing you the root of a pattern. You whisper, "So what am I supposed to do?" The light forms a new symbol, two mirrored curves approaching but never touching. Limit notation, an idea approaching something true, never quite reaching definition. A robed guild member's voice echoes faintly from behind the doorway, soft, almost reverent. Naming is the first step. You realize the variable isn't asking for perfection. It's asking for acknowledgement. You take a slow breath. And you name it, not the moment, not the mistake, but the feeling itself. Fear of being seen incorrectly. The variable stops rotating. The chamber brightens, soft and warm. The symbol collapses into a single glowing point. Then expands into a shape, your shape, but simplified, like a wireframe version of yourself built from calm, steady lines. Your missing variable wasn't a flaw. It was a shadow you never turned to face. You lift the cube. It glows gently. A message appears. Integration begins. The point dissolves into a strand of pure light and streams directly into your chest, not painful, not shocking. Just warm, full, like a puzzle piece quietly sliding into place after years of hiding under the couch. The chamber shifts. The walls brighten. Numbers swirl around you, not chaotic but synchronized, like they're bowing in quiet approval. A soft tone rings through the room, the kind of sound that feels like a beginning. A new doorway unfolds in front of you, its frame shaped from the same light that just entered your chest. Above it, a single phrase forms, step forward as a complete equation. You breathe easier than in any room before, and you walk toward the next shape waiting in the dark geometry ahead. The doorway dissolves behind you the moment you step through, sealing off the chamber of the unnamed variable like a closed eyelid. The air ahead is cooler, thin, crisp, almost metallic, as if the atmosphere has been filtered too many times. A faint click echoes somewhere in the distance, then repeats. Click, 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 in a perfect rhythm. You recognize it instantly. Time, but not the soft, looping kind from clocks or the hyperactive kind from deadlines. This is mechanical time, cold, deliberate, and mathematically precise. You follow the sound until the hallway opens into a circular room bathed in blue light. This must be Ngitu Muoi Bar Lap Lai, the 13th day loop. And the room greets you with a breathtaking sight, dozens of clocks mounted high along the walls, each one ticking at different speeds. Some fast, some slow, some backwards, and one that isn't ticking at all, frozen at a time you don't want to think about. In the center floats a sphere of light, rotating slowly, shedding thin trails of numbers like confetti from a bad breakup. The cube in your hand vibrates, weak at first, then with increasing urgency. Its digits flash rapidly, forming a string you can barely keep up with. Time equals pattern. Pattern equals memory. U equals loop. You whisper, that's not ominous at all, and one of the clocks chimes, not politely, but in a smug, I heard that way. You step closer to the sphere. Every time it rotates, the room shifts. On the second rotation, the walls seem taller. On the third, the clocks align. On the fourth, the sphere flashes, and suddenly you're standing at the entrance of the room again. You blink. What? The click resumes. Click, click, click. You walk forward again, slower this time. When you reach the center, the room glitches, a momentary stutter like a lagging video. The clocks rewind 1 second. The air resets. Your cube flashes in warning, loop detected. User, you. A laugh escapes you, thin, nervous, defensive. Of course, even my trauma apparently has a subscription to Groundhog Day. And the moment you say it, the sphere flashes brighter. A single projection emerges, a memory you didn't ask for, but here it comes anyway. You, at age 13, the calendar on your bedroom wall. The same date circled in red. A project due, a test you feared, a day you dreaded so intensely the world felt like it froze around you. Historians still argue whether the human mind repeats emotional patterns because of neurological wiring or simply because unhealed moments echo until addressed. Standing here, watching your younger self in grainy holographic replay, you suspect the brain is just a very dramatic mathematician. You reach out, and the projection flickers. Clocks shift. The sphere whispers. You don't hear words, but feel them vibrating through the room. You never left this day. Your pulse spikes. The clocks flare. The loop tightens like a knot around your chest. You say quietly, but I grew up. I moved on. The sphere rotates faster, flickering with old calendars, old fears, old expectations. Each rotation shows the same anxious moment, repeated different years, different scenarios, same emotional signature. You didn't stay in the day. The day stayed in you. The cube pulses a softer light now. A message appears. The loop ended factually. Not emotionally. You inhale slowly. So how do I break it? The clocks answer. The frozen one ticks. Just once. A single movement so tiny you almost miss it. Then the sphere expands, forming a glowing circle on the floor, an echo of a clock face. Numbers ripple across its surface, dozens of them, all 13s, arranged in spirals, overlapped, repeating endlessly. You kneel and place a hand on the circle. The spiral stops. The room holds its breath. I was scared, you say, the words trembling at the edges. I didn't know how to handle anything, and I punished myself for it. The clocks begin ticking, slowly aligning to a single unified beat, syncing with your voice. I'm not 13 anymore, you whisper, and I don't have to relive that day. The sphere stops spinning. The projections dissolve. Every clock in the room resets itself to the present moment, your present, and ticks for the first time in perfect harmony. Your cube flickers gently, loop broken, time restored. The central sphere collapses into a narrow beam of light, shooting upward to reveal a new doorway carved from synchronized clockwork gears. You rise, steadier than before, lighter in a way you can't quite explain. The 13th day finally ends, and you step, once and only once, into the next room waiting in the flow of time. The doorway dissolves behind you the moment you step through, sealing off the chamber of the unnamed variable like a closed eyelid. The air ahead is cooler, thin, crisp, almost metallic, as if the atmosphere has been filtered too many times. A faint click echoes somewhere in the distance, then repeats. Click, 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 in a perfect rhythm. You recognize it instantly. Time, but not the soft, looping kind from clocks or the hyperactive kind from deadlines. This is mechanical time, cold, deliberate, and mathematically precise. You follow the sound until the hallway opens into a circular room bathed in blue light. This must be Ngitu Muoi Bar Lap Lai, the 13th day loop. And the room greets you with a breathtaking sight, dozens of clocks mounted high along the walls, each one ticking at different speeds. Some fast, some slow, some backwards, and one that isn't ticking at all, frozen at a time you don't want to think about. In the center floats a sphere of light, rotating slowly, shedding thin trails of numbers like confetti from a bad breakup. The cube in your hand vibrates, weak at first, then with increasing urgency. Its digits flash rapidly, forming a string you can barely keep up with. Time equals pattern. Pattern equals memory. U equals loop. You whisper, that's not ominous at all, and one of the clocks chimes, not politely, but in a smug, I heard that way. You step closer to the sphere. Every time it rotates, the room shifts. On the second rotation, the walls seem taller. On the third, the clocks align. On the fourth, the sphere flashes, and suddenly you're standing at the entrance of the room again. You blink. What? The click resumes. Click, click, click. You walk forward again, slower this time. When you reach the center, the room glitches, a momentary stutter like a lagging video. The clocks rewind 1 second. The air resets. Your cube flashes in warning, loop detected. User, you. A laugh escapes you, thin, nervous, defensive. Of course, even my trauma apparently has a subscription to Groundhog Day. And the moment you say it, the sphere flashes brighter. A single projection emerges, a memory you didn't ask for, but here it comes anyway. You, at age 13, the calendar on your bedroom wall. The same date circled in red. A project you, a test you feared, a day you dreaded so intensely the world felt like it froze around you. Historians still argue whether the human mind repeats emotional patterns because of neurological wiring or simply because unhealed moments echo until addressed. Standing here, watching your younger self in grainy holographic replay, you suspect the brain is just a very dramatic mathematician. You reach out, and the projection flickers. Clocks shift. The sphere whispers. You don't hear words, but feel them vibrating through the room. You never left this day. Your pulse spikes. The clocks flare. The loop tightens like a knot around your chest. You say quietly, but I grew up. I moved on. The sphere rotates faster, flickering with old calendars, old fears, old expectations. Each rotation shows the same anxious moment, repeated different years, different scenarios, same emotional signature. You didn't stay in the day. The day stayed in you. The cube pulses a softer light now. A message appears. The loop ended factually, not emotionally. You inhale slowly. So how do I break it? The clocks answer. The frozen one ticks. Just once. A single movement so tiny you almost miss it. Then the sphere expands, forming a glowing circle on the floor, an echo of a clock face. Numbers ripple across its surface, dozens of them, all 13s, arranged in spirals, overlapped, repeating endlessly. You kneel and place a hand on the circle. The spiral stops. The room holds its breath. I was scared, you say, the words trembling at the edges. I didn't know how to handle anything, and I punished myself for it. The clocks begin ticking, slowly aligning to a single unified beat, syncing with your voice. I'm not 13 anymore, you whisper, and I don't have to relive that day. The sphere stops spinning. The projections dissolve. Every clock in the room resets itself to the present moment, your present, and ticks for the first time in perfect harmony. Your cube flickers gently, loop broken, time restored. The central sphere collapses into a narrow beam of light, shooting upward to reveal a new doorway carved from synchronized clockwork gears. You rise, steadier than before, lighter in a way you can't quite explain. The 13th day finally ends, and you step, once and only once, into the next room waiting in the flow of time. The wooden door feels almost too ordinary after everything you've been through. No glowing digits, no swirling geometry, no equations breathing on the walls. Just grain, hinges, and a brass handle worn down by 1,000 hands that never quite belonged to this world. You reach for it slowly, half expecting it to melt into fractals or launch into a lecture about limits. But no, it stays a door, solid, quiet, waiting. You push it open. On the other side is a small room, round, warm, impossibly calm. The walls are lined with soft paper scrolls and dim lanterns that sway gently, as if stirred by a breeze that exists only in memory. In the center sits a table low to the floor, and above it hovers a sphere made of light and handwriting, familiar handwriting. Yours. This is Lloyd Gi Kong Dan Cho Ban, the solution not for you. Except now, as you step in, you realize it's not exactly a solution. It's something more personal, more human, more earned. You approach the table slowly, the cube warm and steady in your hand. Your steps feel lighter, like gravity is holding you gently instead of pressing you down. On the table rests a single sheet of parchment. Blank, except for a small sentence written at the very bottom. The final equation waits for you to write it. You look around, half expecting the keeper or the guild or a judgmental shade to appear. Nobody does. For the first time in this entire journey, you're alone. Not abandoned, just finally trusted to stand without the architecture of numbers holding your elbows. A mainstream fact crosses your mind. Mathematicians have always chased the final equation, the unified theory, the ultimate truth tying everything together. Historians still argue whether such a thing could exist or whether the search itself is the point. Standing here, staring at the blank parchment, you feel the weight of both answers. The sphere of light above the table rotates slowly. Inside its glow, equations appear, ones you've seen, ones you've solved, ones that solved you. They drift together, merging into the outline of a symbol you recognize instantly, the same shape the vault revealed earlier. A circle divided by a single ray of light. Your missing variable. It floats gently toward you like a lantern passed across a quiet lake. When you reach out, the sphere softens, dissolving into your hands as warmth. The cube vibrates once more, then goes quiet, its job done. You sit at the table. The blank parchment hums faintly under your fingertips, like it's waiting to feel the pressure of your handwriting. You think about everything the room's revealed, the fear, the loop, the geometry of your own uncertainty, the truth you named, the center you reclaimed. And slowly, deliberately, you pick up the pen lying next to the parchment. It's an old fountain pen, nothing fancy, but when you hold it, the nib glows with familiar blue light. You don't write a theorem. You don't write a proof. You write yourself, your constant, your variable, your center. Not in math, but in quiet, simple words. A definition only you can give. As the ink settles onto the parchment, the room brightens. The scrolls unfurl. The lanterns lift. The walls open like petals, revealing the night sky, vast, quiet, shimmering with constellations arranged in geometric paths that make sense only to your newly balanced mind. The cube pulses gently one last time, then dissolves into a strand of light that weaves into the sky, adding your pattern to it. A warm breeze moves through the room, your room now. The door behind you closes softly. Your journey through the mathematics of fear, memory, and identity has reached its end, but something in you has just begun. You step forward, and the sky welcomes you like a solved equation finally allowed to breathe. Word count, 694. Wind down, 300 words. The lanterns dim now, their warm amber glow sinking into a soft haze that settles gently over the chamber. The night sky above you stretches into calm, endless darkness, dotted with quiet stars that no longer pulse with questions, but with reassurance. The air slows, the room softens, and the last traces of the equations that carried you here dissolve into faint silver dust, drifting like far. There's settling onto a still lake. Your breath steadies without you asking it to. Each inhale feels a little deeper, each exhale a little easier. The walls around you melt into a gentle gradient of cool colors, indigo, violet, soft gray, shades that invite your eyes to rest, not to interpret. The world that challenged you, questioned you, stretched you, returns now to a simpler shape. A smaller shape. A safe one, a space where nothing demands solving. The floor beneath you warms, as if welcoming you to stay a while. To settle, to let everything you face become lighter, quieter, more distant. The memory of the rooms echoes gently in your mind, the geometry that whispered, the time that looped, the variable you named, the singularity that released you. But all of it feels softened now, like stories you heard long ago rather than obstacles you fought through. You feel the quiet pride of having crossed something vast and strange and beautiful. You feel the weight easing from your shoulders. You feel the warmth of your own center, steady, present, whole. The breeze drifts one last time, slow and cool, brushing your cheek like a whispered goodnight. Let your eyes grow heavy now. Let the world fade softly from focus. Let the quiet settle gently over your thoughts. You are complete. You are safe. And the journey can rest now. End of script. Sweet dreams.